All right, welcome back to the channel, True Crime fans. We have a live stream going on today. I appreciate everybody waiting. We have a special guest today too, and we'll introduce her in just a moment. But before we do that, if you're joining back again and this is not your first live stream, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and if you like our content, hit that like button because we do want to get the content out to as many people as possible. Now, that being said, I do want to thank our entire community for this past week and really this past month. We've had a lot of brand new subscribers, which is awesome. And in the comment section, we have a lot of folks that are, I would say, reoccurring commenters, which is awesome, bringing a lot of value to our comment section and making us look at cases in a different light, which is really cool. I love when people are very engaged. And like I say before, we don't always have to agree, but I do believe that we have one of the best communities so far. It's very respectful, and the verbatim goes back and forth very nice. So you know who you are. There's some of you out there, and you'll see them when I pull up the comments here in a moment. We really do appreciate that engagement, and it is really exciting. Every morning I wake up and I go check the comments, and then sometimes at night I'll check them as well. I do my admin work in the same office that we do our recordings, so we do that. So that being said, I'm going to introduce you to Alexia Tyler. You did see one of her first videos, but I'll let her introduce herself.
I am Alexia Tyler. I've been working behind the scenes on the channel up until recently, and I just put my first video out. And I have a couple more coming. So
what videos do you have coming, or what are you thinking about covering in some of the videos in the future?
So I definitely have a video on Lucy Letby coming. She was the serial killer nurse from the UK. And then I do want to cover a more local case, Adrian Reynolds.
Okay.
And then another case from Japan, Lucy Blackwater.
Okay. So let me ask you a couple of questions on those just for our viewers. So the first one, the one out of the UK, what is interesting about that, and why would I want to watch that video?
Okay, so she is the most prolific serial killer as it pertains to children in the UK, at least in modern history. The case started in 2015 and didn't wrap up until this year itself. So it's still in headlines, it's still pretty major news, but obviously we don't see as much of it because we're not in the UK.
So I also read, and I could be wrong here, and we don't want to give too much away because there's going to be a whole video on that, but there's 28 more possible cases of babies that she might have had a hand in them dying.
So she was only charged with 8 counts of murder, but they are investigating more than 4,000 other babies that she worked on during her entire career.
Yeah, so that's pretty crazy. So some things to look forward to in the chat. If you have any questions on that video will be coming out. We're not quite sure when, but some of those videos. Let's talk about Adrian Reynolds. So for folks that haven't been around, this was a case that happened quite some time ago now, and it's local to us, to Iowa, but it did make national headlines at one point and then kind of died off. But tell us just a little bit about Adrian Reynolds and what happened in that case.
I'll let you cover that one. I'm still doing the research on it, still trying to put that one together in my head. That one was a little scarier for me because it is a local case, whereas like Lucy Letby, Lucy Blackwater, they were overseas, so it feels a little bit more distant.
All right, so we see Mudcakes is in the chat. We do appreciate, so you'd be one that definitely, we appreciate you leaving the comments and the engagement. It's always fun. We did leave the door open, so for everybody that's joining us, you might hear some background noise, especially when Zane gets home, but we did want to make sure that, you know, obviously Max, our mascot, could come in and say hello. And then we've got Ruru and Cooper that will come in and out as well. If they start barking too much, we'll close the door. But for right now, we like to have the dogs in and out. But no, Adrian Reynolds, so that's going to be a case that happened locally here. Essentially, it started at Taco Bell where Sarah Kolb, who is essentially the antagonist in the story, really does a number on her in the backseat of a car. And then they end up killing poor Adrian Reynolds, and then they end up going and trying to dismember her body and really hiding the crime. And I don't want to give too much away because it is a very interesting story. So for some of you folks, the story is out there if you want to Google it, but Lexi's going to bring you that story. We got a lot of research to do in that one as well and take some of the emotions out of it because I was living in the Quad Cities when that happened, and I remember very vividly some of that case. So we will definitely bring that case to you. And then the last case you were talking about, why did you decide to do, what's the name, Lucy Blackwell?
Blackwater, yeah.
Blackwater. Okay, so why did we choose Lucy Blackwater?
So she was a foreigner in Japan.
Okay.
She had moved there because her sister had started teaching English there and said like, hey, this is amazing, come live here. And it took 8 years to solve her case because the police system over there and their legal system works a lot differently, and they didn't want to cover that. So I wanted to touch on just like how different legal systems can be and how that can affect you as a traveler or as somebody who is living in another country. I shouldn't say traveler. She was living there at the time.
That's awesome. So what gave you the idea to want to do that one?
That was actually a suggestion.
Okay, from?
Jaeger.
All right. And who else?
And my mom.
There you go. So that you got to give your mom shout-outs when shout-outs are due. So I know your mom was pretty close to that case. I think, if I'm not mistaken, your mom was in the apartment adjacent to her. Is that the same one?
No,
that's not the same one. Okay.
I will cover that one, I think, down the line, though, because that one was interesting. She was in the apartment right next to that lady.
All right, fair enough. See, I don't even have my cases right. And Mudcakes, we will definitely tell Max that you say hi. He's just kind of being a guard dog right now. He's laying down right beside Lexi, and then we got Cooper chewing on a bone. Cooper's always in the room, by the way. So every video that I've ever recorded, Cooper is typically sitting on the bed back here. This is Cooper's bed, by the way. So if other dogs try to get up on this bed, sometimes he'll let him up, sometimes he won't. It does act as a guest bedroom as well, but Cooper will definitely let them know if they're allowed to be up on the bed or not. If he gets jealous and he decides that it's wine time, he will make sure that the German Shepherd and the Doberman go on their way, in a very nice way, of course. But Cooper is in the room right now. So a couple of things that we're going to hit. I kind of want to hit some format stuff, and then I'm going to ask Lexi about some current cases. We're going to talk about Ruby Frank a little bit, and then I'll talk about a couple of the cases that I did. First and foremost, this is going to be our last live stream for quite some time. I love doing live streams, especially when we have people in the chat. It's pretty cool to, just to see people say hi, and it gives us an opportunity to say thank you for all the support. So like Mudcakes, you're very supportive of the channel, and we appreciate that, and we recognize that, and we love waking up to thoughts and perspective on that. So I know I try to write that, and it doesn't always come across the way that I want to, but the support is very much appreciative. Just anybody that's watching the videos is pretty awesome, but the channel's growing at a good clip. What I want to do to replace the live streams, though, is do kind of like an end of the week recap, and we might do that next week or the week after, just depending on how much work is for me, because I've been doing a lot of traveling lately. And I also want to bring the videos out and bring some content up. So essentially what we're trying to do is do some segment type stuff. So maybe like a 10-minute weekly recap where we have like the novel of the week that we would suggest. Lexi's a huge reader, so we'd have her doing the novel. Maybe look at the documentary of the week. A huge one right now that we're hearing about is Maya on Netflix. I can't remember what the full name of that is. That Saving Maya?
I think so.
Yeah, it's the one with I haven't watched the whole documentary yet, but that case is going on right now. The documentary I would recommend for this week, it's actually like a mini series, is either Painkillers on Netflix or Dope Sick on Hulu, because both of those are about the opioid pandemic, and both of them tell a totally different story but very similar on how the pandemic started. And I was planning on doing a video on that anyways at some point, so that would be my documentary of the week that I would recommend. So we would do that, and then we would just talk about some of the cases, and then we'd also talk about like the case of the week that I think you folks should really tune into. And we'll talk about that a little bit and try to do it all in 10 minutes and then just do a recap of everything else that's going on. So we're going to try to play around with that format. Like I said, it might be 2 to 3 weeks before we bring our first one out. We will definitely keep our videos coming as well, and with Lexi working in front of the camera now, we might bring more videos. It just depends on timing and what that all looks like. So these are all things that we're working on the channel. One thing I do guarantee everybody is that we will have a video every Wednesday. Outside of that, they're all extra videos, so I've already got videos built for next week. So anytime that happens, or if something big happens, like this week, I talked a lot about Kevin Franke and then Richard Allen. Those were things that popped up earlier on in the week, so I tried to make a point to get those videos out. So that being said, we're going to transition to Ruby Franke. It's a huge case right now. Lexi's video is getting a lot of views so far, so I'm going to turn it over to Lexi to just kind of give us a synopsis of what's going on with Ruby Franke. I'll put in a little bit on Kevin Franke, and then I'll talk about Richard Allen after, and then we'll wrap up. So if you folks have any questions, just let us know. But what's going on with Ruby Franke? What the heck happened in this case? And why is it such an interesting case? A lot of people are looking at this right now.
Yeah, well, so it actually starts back in 2015. She decided to start vlogging her life with her 6 children and her husband. It was called 8 Passengers because they had 8 people in the family. And I initially saw her for the first time, I want to say in early 2016 when I was in middle school. A lot of my friends had seen her and were like, oh my goodness, this lady is crazy. Like, she had taken her bedroom away from her son, was taking meals away, making him sleep on the floor, and was filming everything for the public to see. So she definitely had a lot of backlash on that channel, but up until 2019, things were pretty steady, pretty smooth. Nothing really happened, and then there was a petition to have CPS come into the house, put together by some ex-fans. It never went anywhere, but then later that year, her daughter ended up calling the cops saying, like, hey, my 5 younger siblings have been at this house for multiple days by themselves. I don't know where our mom is. And again, that never went anywhere because the kids didn't let them come inside the house, so obviously they couldn't do any further investigation on that. And then Jody Hildebrandt comes into their lives, and things start to change. They start to have more extreme parenting practices, and eventually Kevin Franke moves out of the home, and he blames it on Jody. He says that Jody was in the middle of their marriage, and then all of the videos on her personal YouTube, the 8 Passengers, stopped. And people were confused, like, where did you go? She was still posting on Jody's podcast and her therapy site Connections, but not nearly as much as she had been. And then we find this out in August of this year, actually.
Yeah. So let me pause there for a second. So Marquita, number 245, right? That was our 245th sub, which is awesome. Welcome to the channel, and hi, and we appreciate your support as well. So Lex, let me ask you something. I did the Kevin Franke video, and I when I did that video, for everybody's reference, I still am to this day pretty neutral on Kevin Franke, but there has been some really great comments in highlighting essentially what that could look like from a PTSD standpoint, from a child perspective. So I'm really rethinking the situation with Kevin Franke. But what's your opinion? Let's just give the raw thoughts. Do you think that Kevin Franke, one, do you think he had knowledge of the abuse that was going on? You've been watching the channel since 2016. So let me just stop there, and then I'll ask you the next question. Do you think he was knowledgeable of what was happening?
Absolutely. Maybe not to the extent towards the end there because he wasn't in the home, but absolutely.
So that being said, do you think that the abuse got worse in those last 14 months, or do you think the abuse has been going on since 2016 and now it's just convenient for Kevin to say?
Right. That one, I can't say. I do think that after he left, it did get worse. But that's not to say that there wasn't, serious physical abuse happening while he was still in the home.
So the question that I ask in my video, and I'll ask this in chat too, but you don't hear the kids really talk about Kevin being an abuser. Now, that doesn't mean that he wasn't an abuser. It could very well mean that he's a very scary person. And And I'm not saying that he is. I'm just saying it's a possibility that they don't say anything about Kevin because they're scared of him. But it is odd to me that they talk a lot about the mom. And even in my video, I show the clip where she talks about, you know, she gets whatever she wants, however she wants, right? She will manipulate everything. She's very self-aware. So is it a possibility that he wasn't abusive, but he ignored the warning signs that were out there?
I think that's also a possibility, and obviously you can't go back and watch all of these videos, now she's taken it down, but he was an active participant in some of these punishments. He was smiling and laughing just as much as she was. Now, I couldn't say about the most recent stuff, obviously, but I think what that was is it could just be like the lesser of two like evils in that situation. The 4 kids haven't come out publicly just because they are minors; they're being protected. And her daughter and her son, who are adults now, haven't said much about the case, and I think it's just because it's really raw, really sore for them, and I think we'll see more from them, and possibly even a civil suit from the 2 oldest children.
Yeah, I could see that coming up. And then Marquita said that she thinks Kevin knew. I think a lot of people think that he knew, and I agree with that, by the way, 100%, based off all the comments that were coming in. I'm like, he had to have known. And like I said, I'm still pretty neutral in where the kids should go, because I just don't fully understand what had went on, and I want to see what plays out in court. But I just can't imagine him not knowing what was happened. But that also brings up a lot of factors of like, was this a shock value thing to do in front of the cameras, and what did that look like? Obviously, we know more now. But it's like, what's going to be best for these kids? And we're seeing this happen in more places as well. So my last question on this one is, do you think Kevin Franke should have the opportunity to have his kids back? And if so, is there steps that they need to take, or is it that just a hard no?
See, I think that one's tricky. I obviously don't know like the intimate details of the situation with that. Ruby Franke's sister put out a video basically saying that this was very common in their family, this type of parenting, that she and Ruby experienced this together, and that Kevin Franke's family wasn't a huge fan of her. The Frankes didn't really like Ruby. So I think it is entirely possible that maybe he didn't have as big of a hand in it as we think. And I think maybe if, you know, some like intense therapy and just some like remediation was done, that it could be possible for him to get his kids back. I think right now, no, I don't think he should have her back.
Okay. And I think that obviously with any kind of a case that's this complex, there's a lot of things that are going to play out prior to us finding out if he gets his kids back. And depending on what we see, we could change our minds as well. We're all human too, but I think that's a good answer. I think that if he does get the opportunity to get his children back, same thing, counseling's got to happen, stuff like that. So very interesting case, and it'll be something that we'll continue to watch. And I think that we're going to have to see, like, you know, what's going to happen with this. Marquita said, did we all see that they took their money away from Ruby Frank? I did not see that. You want to close that door real quick?
Yeah.
We got the kids here. We got the little man here too. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I did not see that, and I think that would be good for the update as well, because what's that going to look for her legal team? I do find it interesting that they're putting a lot of this back on Jodi Hildebrandt, and I do believe Jodi's a huge influence on all of this. If you watch the video from Lexi, we won't rehash that, but clearly she's manipulative, and clearly she's evil as well. There's no doubt about it. But I would say, with all of this stuff going on, it's just weird to me that parents would treat their kids this way at some point. Believe me, there's times where Lexi should have been put in duct tape and whatever happened else. There was times, definitely. But we just had to, like, be parents about it and look like, is that the right thing to do? Or maybe we'll just send her to her room and let her think about it for a little while. You know, that ended up working out better. Well, not maybe, I don't know. But all jokes aside, like when you hear about kids being bound, and what's the point of having kids at that point? Like if you're just going to treat them that way. It's the same thing with pets, dogs, things like that. A living, breathing thing shouldn't be hit, shouldn't be bound, shouldn't be. You have to teach them a different way to, essentially be good. And the manipulation piece is scary because when I hear some of the stuff that Ruby says, it's pretty crazy. So, moving on. Let's talk about. So I'm going to talk about Richard Allen. I'll hit a couple other things, and then I'm going to have Lexi take over the chat here for just a moment, so that way she can take a look. Richard Allen. So this one, first and foremost, I know nothing about Odinism. Okay, when this popped up this week, I was like, I should do a video on the ritualistic killing of Abby and Libby, right? And then I started doing the research on it, and I was like, okay. And then you add the factor of it's a modern day Odinism with white supremacists, and it's a cult, and it was a sacrificial killing, and you add the 92 different reasons that the memorandum states why Richard Allen couldn't have killed those two little girls. I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. I would love to bring a video later on the Odinism and what all that means and entails and if it's a possibility. Right now, I just can't comment on it because I just don't know enough about it. And I really need to do enough research and go in-depth enough to really understand what that means and if it's actually possible. So what I did with the Richard Allen stuff is I focused on the Franke motion because the Franke motion is so important in this case, because the Franke motion essentially means that whenever they file for a Franke motion, that is questioning the validity of the search warrant. And based off of what we know with the search warrant is saying, hey, we went in and we found all these items, and that allowed us to arrest Richard Allen based on this crime. Finding the gun, that essentially matches the bullet that was on scene, finding jacket, just a ton of stuff, right? So in this Franke motion, what the defense is alleging is that the detective didn't say enough, right? So at the end of the day, what the detective was telling the judge was a partial or half the information that should have been provided to the judge, because any reasonable judge would not have provided that search warrant if they would have had the full scope of the information. The defense is also stating that based off of the evidence that they had up to that point, there wasn't enough evidence that said that they could go do that search warrant. Again, it's either gross negligence or if it was intentional, it was done to get that search warrant. So based off of this Franke motion, if the defense can prove this and the judge does throw that warrant out, every piece of evidence that was found with that warrant would not be able to be presented in court. Now, what are the implications of that? We, as crime sleuths, get the opportunity to look at everything, whether it is going to make it to the court case or not. We can form our opinion based off of what we know. And I said this in the video. If you watch Law Abiding Citizen, it's got a great sentence in there where it says it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So if you look at this case, okay, everything that's going into the arrest affidavit was, I would say 70% was found because of that search warrant. Now, what is the prosecution going to be able to prove if all of that stuff comes out of the search warrant? Okay, it's going to be a really hard case to prove. So that's why I also put in the confession in this video, and that confession happened back in April 3rd. But what I want people to think about is he confessed, right? That's what changed my mind. Before I was pretty neutral. Like, did he do it? Did he not do it? With Keegan Kline contacting the girls, and I thought Keegan Kline had a lot more role to play in all of this, and I still think he's got a role somehow. I don't know how he plays into this. It's just odd. He's in the same town. He's talking to him on social media. I would almost venture to say he probably knew where they were going to be that day, and then it ends up being Richard Allen. Somehow those two are tied. I don't know how. That's my own conspiracy theory. Figure that one out. You pull all of that information out, what do they have left? They have this confession, but the confession would get thrown out because then he shouldn't have been in jail because he was put in jail based off of the... Do you see how this Franke motion could change everything? I think everybody's focused on the Odinism, which it is the right thing to focus on because that was put in the memorandum, and there were 60 pages in that memorandum out of 136 pages that was focused on Odinism. So I get that. And that is going to be huge, and that's going to be up to a judge and ultimately a jury, if he doesn't play out at some point, to go through that and see if there's any validity to it. I just think this Frank motion is a lot more important than what people are putting the weight on it. And based off of, if you go back and watch my video, we go line by line how the defense puts it out to the judge. It's scary. I'm telling you, folks, it is scary. That is a 50-50 right now, and I'm telling you, if it gets... There, two things are going to happen. The judge lets it stay in, and that's going to open up for appeal if he's found guilty, or the judge is going to take it out, which takes the appeal off the table, but I just don't know if they can get a conviction without it. So this is where I stand. I think Richard Allen's guilty, but just like I said in the video, there's 4 different ways or 3 different ways this can go. He's guilty, but he's found innocent. He's guilty, but he's found guilty. He's innocent, but he's found guilty. He's innocent, and he's found innocent. Those are the 4 things that could happen. I think he's guilty, and he's possibly going to be found not guilty at some point. So that was kind of the point I was trying to get across in that video. And I know sometimes in the video, because I can't cover everything because the videos would last a long time, I can't say, like, here's all the things that point his way, because I've already done videos on that, and there's a lot of things that point his way. No question. All I'm trying to get across is like 70% of that stuff might get thrown out. And you're going to see that in my Brian Koberger video tomorrow about his innocence. I don't think Brian Koberger's quite innocent either, but I think that there's a lot of things the prosecution's got to work on, and I'm not going to get into that because my video is tomorrow, so hopefully you're excited and you'll watch it. But there's some things, I think there's 5 pieces of evidence or 5 key things that the prosecution needs to do to make sure that we're good. Anything going on in there?
Nothing too crazy, just talking about wow, because that case is a wow.
Yeah, Richard Allen is a big one, and all we want is for Libby and Abby to get justice. Look, at the end of the day, kids should be able to go walk in a park without having to fear for their life. And at the end of the day, I think Richard Allen did it. I just think that Keegan Kline had something to do with it somehow. He may not have been directly involved, but somehow. Again, that being said, I'm not familiar with Odinism. I have to familiarize myself with it. It's going to take a lot of research. Once I do that, I may put out another video on it. So that's me going in with a little bit of ignorance because I don't quite understand that very well. So anybody that's watching this, if you do, definitely leave a comment. Try to explain it. See if I can get it or not. And then the last case that I'm looking over that I haven't done a video on yet, but I want everybody to think about, is the defense closed this week on Amy Harwick. This is a sad case, and it's a popular case because she dated Drew Carey back in 2018. And in 2018, basically, she was engaged to Drew Carey. So anytime there's a celebrity involved, it's going to make a case more heightened. I will tell you, at the end of the day, though, I used to do a lot of things with Hope Line with Verizon for domestic violence. Specifically when I lived in Oklahoma, I used to give, I don't want to say speeches, but we used to watch Telling Amy stories with essentially college students so we could bring up awareness in domestic violence. This Amy Harwick case is a classic case of stalking and domestic violence that essentially ended up in the death of Amy Harwick. So when I do this video, I'm going to do it about Amy, but it might come out late because the video is not going to necessarily be about Amy. It's going to be about every woman out there that's ever experienced domestic violence. And I really want to capture the story of how it started, because the relationship didn't start off rough, right? Because if her red flags would have started off rough, she probably would have never dated the guy. But at the end, now we're going to trial to say, did she commit suicide or was she thrown off of the balcony? And the thing that keeps popping up is like, why was he in the apartment anyways? Why was he stalking her? And, you know, there's rumors out there that he was in the apartment for 20 hours. And I've got a little bit more research to do in the case. But this one here is representative of domestic violence all over the U.S., all over Canada, I'm sure all over the world. So when you read that case, don't think of just Amy Harwick. Think of every other person that met this exact same fate, that didn't have a name, that didn't have a voice, that didn't have a ton of media that was going day by day watching this case unfold. Very similar to, if you get an opportunity, watch Telling Amy's Story, but just make sure that you have, you know, either Kleenex or something that you can wipe your face, because that is a very sad story, and I've watched it probably 100 times, and I've had to give the synopsis to, like I said, college students. I've had to do it on the news, had to do it on the radio, specifically back between 2010 and 2013. So when you're watching that story, think of it from a bigger scale, and we will bring a video out on that. I can't remember what the guy's name. It really doesn't matter what his name is. We'll just call him domestic abuser. Not a very good guy. I'll just tell you that right now. I don't go for domestic violence or domestic abuse. As a matter of fact, you can ask Lexi. I've got a temper for sure. But hitting people or hitting dogs or hitting animals or just really hitting any living being is just not something that we do, and it's not something that I believe in. I really do believe if you're strong and people are behind you, you need to protect them. If you're strong and people are beside you, you guys need to work together. And if you're strong and there's people in front of you that are getting in your way or trying to attack the people behind you, you protect them. That is just something that I've always lived by, and that's something that we should live by here. So very, very sad case. This is a really hard one to watch and try to really pay attention. So for you folks that are out there, I will try to bring a synopsis, but keep in mind when I do bring that video, it's going to be on a grander scale, and we're really going to highlight some of that stuff. So that being said, that's all we have for this week. I am going to turn it over to Lexi because I did kind of steal the show a little bit on those last two. What did you have that you wanted to add, and what did you want to tell the community? I know your first video went pretty well.
Yeah.
My first video that I ever did on this channel, you can go back and see, it's got 13 total views. How many does yours have? How many does yours have now?
I know I'm up in the 200s, but it's just been slowly climbing. So every time I look, I've got, a couple more views, which is amazing. I wasn't expecting it to do so well. I was really surprised. Every comment's been super sweet, super supportive, which has been great. That was the one thing I was really nervous about, was those troll comments. I'm expecting them at some point, but everybody's been super great about that. So it's definitely helped with the motivation of wanting to do like another video, because it was really fun recording, putting everything together.
Was it hard?
It was hard.
Tell us about that. Tell us how.
Okay.
Everybody thinks it's easy. I thought it was easy, and then I did my first one. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't get so nervous, I guess, anymore. But you're sitting in front of the camera, and it's like, okay, brain, think. You gotta say something. So just think, and then it's like you mess up, you've got to pause, and then say the whole thing again, and hope you don't mess up that time, and then. Editing, I didn't realize editing was going to be so difficult, because we would find the perfect clip, it would be the perfect cut, and then I'd mess it up mid-sentence and we'd have to get rid of the whole thing and do it all over again.
Just for reference, we were editing till almost 2 a.m. to get that video out, by the way, which I thought was a lot of fun. But I got a question for you that I didn't ask her this before, but I say it to people that leave comments. How motivating is it when you get... Not necessarily, I don't want to say good comments, but good feedback comments. Because sometimes, feedback can hurt a little bit, but it helps us grow. And I love that people are comfortable enough to give us raw feedback. And you'll see people not agree in the comments, but they do it respectfully. But how motivating is it to see some of the comments that come up?
I think it's like two different aspects of that. It's like, okay, wow, I want to do better, because then I want their next comment to be, wow, I can't believe that, like, you did this and this, and then on the other aspect, it's like, okay, well, how can I do better? So those comments definitely make it easier to
stay motivated.
Yeah, I think
Marquita,
so.
I didn't know you did videos. We'll have to check out your profile, and we'll definitely follow you after this stream. So, and we appreciate the feedback as well. But I bring that up because we do really, for a small community, we've got a lot of people that really are engaged. And when I do say it's much appreciated, I try to end a lot of my comments with that, because it really is. You got to think as a viewer, you don't have to do anything. You can look at the content, and if the content's no good, you click away. If you stay and watch 2 videos, the importance and how much that means to a content creator is insanity. You could give me $10,000 and that wouldn't be worth as much as your next view. And then your comment, because what you're doing as a viewer, you you stop and you leave a comment. Like, you literally stopped in the middle of your day to leave a comment. And that's why I say sometimes feedback can hurt, but it doesn't hurt in a negative way. Sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't notice that, or I could have done better. And I've had to eat my words, and sometimes I've had to come out and say, no, I stand by my video, but there's sometimes where we get it wrong. I get it wrong. I work full-time, just like many people that are viewing the videos work full-time. Sometimes we get it wrong, and it's appreciative to have people to come back and say, hey, this is off. I'll use an example. One of my videos that I did 3 weeks ago, I had somebody reach out and just send me a private message that said, hey, I don't know what's going on, but your intro said the same thing like 6 times. Well, I uploaded the raw video instead of the edited video. And so I had to go watch it. But if everybody was afraid to tell me that because I don't take feedback well, I would have never changed the video and it'd still be up there right now. So, so we love that. We love, and we're in the mindset that not everybody has to agree. We're okay with that. We think everybody should have their own opinion. We think that it should be an all-inclusive channel where, you know, as long as you're respectful, you can voice any opinion. And look, it's true crime. The beauty of true crime is there's different theories, there's different perspectives, there's different things that we say based off of all the stuff we get to see before trial. Not everybody knows what's going to go to trial. I certainly don't, but then we can try to predict what's going on. And then when I hear your perspectives, it gets me. I'm telling you, I'll go to work and I'll be thinking like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or, you know, life experiences are a big one too. Like, there's a lot of people that give their life experiences and I'm like, well, I've never had that experience. What a perspective to really dive into and try to put yourself in that situation. Obviously, you'll never have the same feelings as them because you didn't experience it firsthand, but it does get you to kind of think about some of that stuff. So we do want to thank everybody for that, and we do appreciate the support. And even if your channel is random, we'll still go check it out because I'm on YouTube. I swear to God, I go 8 hours to work. I probably sleep 6 hours, and the rest of my time is either walking the dogs or on YouTube. So if I'm not editing, making a video, I'll be doing a little bit of gaming, and then I'll be watching other people on YouTube. I try to stay away from true crime a lot because I don't want to steal other people's ideas. So I'll look at like more documentary styles or you know, that kind of stuff. But I do spend a lot of time on YouTube, and that's where I will say, if you're not following her, I don't know her personally, but Titanium Built was one I was showing Lexi the other day. Probably the hardest working true crime person I've ever seen. You get a chance to check her out. Titanium Built is pretty awesome and very motivating when I do watch her. Again, I don't watch her a lot because I want to make sure that our channel is different from everybody else's, so I don't want to release the same content that they are, but real cool stuff. So that being said, Lexi, I appreciate you being on the live stream. Again, we're probably not going to do a live stream for a while. We could always bring it back later, but for right now we want to focus on the content and bring quality content. So if you do have ideas, and I know you bring forward those ideas, we're still working on the name. Candid is still out there. Canine's still out there. Adobe Detective's still kind of looking. The 3-dog one I really liked as well. I thought that was a really good one. I think we took Unleashed out of there because there's several different Unleashed ones, so that sucks. I was kind of sad. But we really do want to play on our dogs because
they're a huge part of the family.
Huge part of the family.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let me ask you before I do wrap it up. Which one's your favorite dog?
Well, Cooper's my dog. Well,
why is Cooper?
Well, okay, so Cooper was intended to be my dog, and then you guys bonded, and now he's just a big old grumpy fella.
Well, I think it was because you got a kitty cat is why he bonded with me.
Well, I did. I moved out for a little while. I was living in a completely different state, and I couldn't have a 90-pound dog in a little apartment.
So who's my favorite dog?
I think Max, maybe. I don't know. Maybe Cooper.
Well, what about Ruru?
See, Ruru is the most, I think, unappreciated dog.
She is the most unappreciated dog. She's German
and
Shepherd.
I think she's probably, don't tell the boys, I think she's the smartest and most hardworking.
She is definitely the smartest and the most hardworking, and she thinks I'm her boyfriend. So,
yes, she does.
That dog is the most loyal dog ever.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think I like dogs more than people?
I think so. I
do.
So.
There's no doubt about it. And that's nothing against people.
Our dogs get treated like royalty.
They do. So based off of that, that's all we have for you this week. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, if you've got anything that'll make the stream better, just let us know. Leave a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Hit that like. Let's get it out to more people. And we appreciate you. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.